everyone. Hope you're doing well. And in today's flash briefing, I am joined by our Director of Financial Planning, Andy Anderson. And we're going to talk about one of the cardinal truth pieces of the financial planning world. It's a number that you all are familiar with, and you probably have your own opinions about it. We want to kind of myth bust this one cornerstone of the financial planning world and talk about what is true about it and what may not be true about it. But before we do that, I want to invite you to join us for a really special event that we have coming up. On Thursday, April 21st, we are hosting The Truth. And this is an event where we have an economist coming in from First Trust. His name's Andrew Updike. And we're going to dive into, in a really plain spoken, directly to the point analysis of what's going on in our world right now. We have record inflation, rising interest rates. We have Russia invading Ukraine, a lot of volatility in the markets. And so we're going to dig into, using data, what exactly is the truth in the world today. And so Andrew's going to do a great job presenting on that. And our senior wealth advisor and founder, John Creekmer, is going to be hosting the event. If you would like to attend, now we're going to put a link here in this video or in this email where you can go and save your seat. The event is hosted at the Embassy Suites in East Peoria, Illinois. But if you're out of state and you still want to attend, we will be live streaming the event as well on Facebook Live. And so visit that link where you can register to either attend in person or online. And we look forward to seeing you at what is going to be a great event and a really timely one for everyone that is in the markets or is focusing on retirement in today's world. So hope to see you there. And so now that out of the way, Andy, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are things going where you are?
It's going good. We finally kind of got to some spring weather here, sunny and 75, so I can't complain too much.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and I was looking on the weather app on my phone and it said 64 degrees out. And I was like, wait a second, and I refreshed and it said 34. So
I'm so sorry.
So I got a little psyched out there to start my day.
Oh man, hey, it's soon enough though, right? Soon enough it'll
be
sunny and 75.
We'll get there.
So, all right. Well, hey, what are we talking about today? I think we're going to talk about the 4% rule. Can you kind of lay out for us what the 4% rule is at its core and how it applies to people?
Yeah, so back in the early 90s, financial advisor William Bengen conducted a study to determine basically what a safe withdrawal rate is for retirees. And he found that if a person withdraws 4% of their portfolio over the course of their retirement, that they should not run out of money. So essentially, the way it works is, let's say you have $1 million portfolio, then you take 4% of that, 40,000. That's your first year withdrawal, and then you simply use that number and adjust it for inflation over time to come up with the amount that you would withdraw from the portfolio each year going forward. And he found that if you do that, the portfolio showed to last anywhere from 35 to 50 years over time.
Okay, awesome. So that sounds like a great rule of thumb. And something that we say here at Creekmer Wealth is there are a lot of rules of thumb in the financial planning world, but really that's just a starting point. It's not customized to your individual unique situation. We're all different people. We all have different situations and goals and financial assets. And so this rule of thumb is a good starting point, but it's not the cardinal truth for each person. Can you kind of walk us through how we think about rules of thumb like the 4% withdrawal rule?
Yeah, so rule of thumb, I think, is good when you're talking to a large population of people. But when you get down to the specific person, obviously situations change and facts change. So, for instance, the 4% withdrawal rule, as I said, was shown to last potentially as long as 50 years in retirement. Well, if I'm 70 years old and I'm just entering retirement, will I need my portfolio to last 50 years? Probably not. So maybe at that point, I'm able to take out more than 4% and have a higher standard of living in retirement. On the flip side, if I'm younger, or maybe if I have something like a pension that's providing some of my income, well, I may not need or be required to take as much as 4% out. So all of the other factors play into that to determine what is your specific withdrawal rate that makes sense for you and your plan.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I think that's really helpful to keep that in mind that when we're talking about this, right? It's a little bit unique for each person. And there's also some major assumptions that are made in calculating that 4% rule that William Bengen made. There are also some risks that are associated with those assumptions. Can you walk us through maybe the top 3 to 4 major risks that we see when determining what is a unique to you safe withdrawal rate?
Yeah. So unique to you, I think that's important because some folks may have a goal of, hey, I want to gift, X number of dollars to the next generation, or, I want to be left with $0 when it's all said and done. I want to spend my money and enjoy it while I can, while I'm living. So each person has their own goal. But Michael Kitces, another person in the financial industry that has done a lot of research on these types of topics, did kind of a follow up study. And he found that using the 4% withdrawal rule, you are just as likely to end up with a portfolio balance 6 times as large as when you started as you are to end up with the same balance that you started with. So
Wow.
there's a lot of variability there, and there's a lot that can go into that to where we don't really know exactly how it's going to play out over time in your specific situation. So that's one of the things where maybe we adjust it year to year as far as the withdrawal, seeing what happens in the market, what happens with the portfolio, so that you're not ending up with much more or much less than your goal is.
Right. Right. And I think that 6 times number, that's kind of a stunning number if you actually
Yeah,
think about it. That means you could do a lot of extra things on top of that, just
right,
meeting your basic needs, right? I mean,
right.
that's a huge change in what you're able to do. And you kind of mentioned a huge factor with determining what that outcome is, either 6 times or maybe less, and that's investment planning. And that
Mhm.
is a huge component
Right.
to the calculation of this 4% rule. Walk us through how investment planning affects success with this rule of thumb.
Yeah, yeah. So when William Bengen did the study, he found that having too few of your dollars in stocks is actually just as risky, or even more so, than having too much in stocks. So we always think of stocks as the risky asset, and
Right.
man, it's going to really impact my portfolio if there's a drop in the market. But reality is, having too few stocks can have just as big or bigger of an impact on your portfolio when it's all said and done. So when he ran the numbers, he was using basically a 50-50 split between stocks and bonds. But the reality is, again, when we take it down to the individual level, each person, each couple has their own ideal portfolio that works for them, that fits their goals and their timeframes. So, and then, in our firm, we're not constrained to simply stocks and bonds. There are other tools out there that we may use to try to reduce volatility and maybe provide a little bit more of a known outcome in certain situations. So um, it, it all comes back to the individual person, the individual couple, to say what's the investment portfolio, the mixture that works for them and their goals. And some of that plays into, are you left with 6 times what you started with, or are you left with the same amount that you started with? So a lot
Sure.
of that customization goes into the investment portfolio as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned customization because one of the things that we always do here at Cooper Wealth is we take it year by year or month by month, even on saying, hey, is something changing that's going to drastically alter the base assumption? And so, you talked about the 50-50 asset allocation, 50% stocks, 50% bonds. There's been some major changes in the last 6 months
Mm-hmm.
that would make 50% of your money being in bonds possibly having a big effect on what your portfolio outcome may be and how much
Right.
money you could draw down, right?
May
I mean,
actually increase risk at this point, right? By having
yeah,
50% in bonds. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And so that's where having the ability to touch base and then maybe customize your portfolio a little bit more away from just stocks and bonds really makes sense to ensure that your standard of living doesn't have to change. And one of the other things, Andy, that you've done a ton of work on as our director of financial planning is in the tax area. And we're in a really unique moment in time here from a tax planning standpoint, where there's possibly a lot of value that could be added or lost long term if you have appropriate tax planning. Can you kind of just walk us through what the risk on the tax front looks like?
Yeah. So with the taxes, when this 4% rule was developed, it did not take taxes into consideration. So it did not say, okay, if you're withdrawing from a pre-tax account or a Roth account, it just looked at a flat withdrawal. So the reality is, a lot of our clients come to us and they've got, a large majority, maybe even as much as 100% of their retirement portfolio in a pre-tax account. the reality is we see a balance in that account, but we don't actually know how much of that belongs to the investor themselves. The government is going to take a cut of that as far as through taxes.
Right.
So when we're looking at that and we're kind of using that 4% rule in our mind, again, I'll use that $1 million portfolio. And if we're thinking through, okay, we can withdraw $40,000 a year. Well, if that's all taxable, we don't know if we're going to be taxed at current rates. We don't know if tax rates are going to rise in the future. So in reality, we don't know how much of that 40,000 actually belongs to us.
Right.
So it can be a little difficult to plan. So we do a lot of planning, like you mentioned, in tax optimization to say, can we effectively move dollars from a pre-tax account to a Roth account? And by doing that, remove some of that tax risk from the equation, and maybe have a better idea of how much we'll ultimately be able to keep once we withdraw from those accounts.
Right. Right. And, there are no such thing as guarantees in the investing and financial planning world. However, if you want to talk about another rule of thumb, one of the best places where you can save yourself a ton of money with good planning is in the tax area. And so we would definitely recommend that if you haven't had a conversation with your advisor about how to optimize your portfolio from a tax standpoint, you really should have that conversation. I think we've done now hundreds of these reports, and there's a lot of money that you can save yourself in that field. The other area that's a huge just concern for all people is insurance. I think every person in the United States has concerns here. Andy, can you walk us through how we view insurance planning and what that risk is there?
Yeah, so insurance should be used to cover a specific need. That need may be a health event. That need may be an early death. The need may be legacy planning and maybe providing more dollars or more tax efficient dollars to heirs. So there should always be a need that the insurance is solving. And the reality is that need may be protecting against the unknown in retirement. So with the 4% withdrawal rule, again, there's some uncertainty there to say, if we're planning on withdrawing, again, this $40,000 off of our portfolio, well, what happens if we have a long-term care event that costs an extra $10,000 a month for the individual or one of the spouses to go into a long-term care facility? Well, that's $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year that's coming out of the portfolio that was not factored into that 4% rule. So we like to make sure that if there is a risk that can be covered by insurance, that we do that in the correct way and do it effectively. Again, it comes down to the individual person and their situation, but insurance can absolutely play a role in reducing the unknown and allowing us to be a little bit more certain on how much we can withdraw each year.
Sure. So, Andy, when we talk about it, there's a number of risks to this 4% rule that may change it either on the upside or the downside. Maybe, for you, it may be 5.5% your safe withdrawal rate, or for someone else, it might be 3%. I think that factors into one of the biggest questions that we hear from people whenever they're approaching the retirement or work optional lifestyle is, hey, do I have enough? And how do we advise people to help them determine, one, do they have enough? And two, how can you safeguard your assets and your overall financial plan to ensure that if something changes in the world or in your life, that you are still able to live the life you want to live when you want to live it? How do we walk through that with folks?
Yeah. So when we get that question, do I have enough? We always turn around and say, well, what does enough mean to you? We have to define what enough is. If we don't know what the finish line is or where we're trying to get to, we'll never know if we've actually gotten there or if we're on track to get there. So step number one is determining, what does enough mean to me? What does that look like? Once we have that, then we can bring in some of the quantifiable numbers as far as portfolio balance. How much do we need to save every year? How much can we withdraw from the portfolio? What percent of stocks and bonds or other tools should we have in the portfolio? That all comes into play after we know what we're actually working towards. So one of the fun parts of financial planning is determining what are those goals that you're kind of reaching for. Right. Once you have that in place, then we can do all the legwork and all the analysis to determine, how do we get from here to where we want to be. So that's step number one. And then it's a matter of bringing in the correct tools to help effectively and efficiently accomplish those goals.
Right. And then once you have that idea identified of what enough looks like for you, and you have a good plan in place, then it's just a process of continually updating and adjusting as life changes, as markets and the economy change. And that's where having a great team behind you will make your life so much easier, because ultimately you've worked hard for what, 30, 40 years. You want to enjoy the things that you've been working hard to be able to enjoy. So that's where having a great team of professionals behind you really frees you up to do that as well. And so, Andy, I think we've kind of dove into one of these, general rules of thumb that everyone knows. We've kind of dug it up. So, kind of close this out here. What are some things that you would encourage people to do who say, hey, I've been planning on a 4% rule of my portfolio, but now I'm not sure if this is enough or if this is the right number for me? What would you encourage people to do?
Yeah, so I think we mentioned this earlier. Rule of thumbs. I like a rule of thumb. I think it's great to get the masses on track and maybe give them an idea of what to shoot for. But then, really, for you individually, we need to bring it down to a personal level and say, what are your specific goals? What are your specific circumstances? Because, although everyone may be working towards retirement, what your retirement looks like is going to be different in some way from your neighbors, your friends, your brothers, your siblings, whatever it is. It's going to be different. So we need to make sure that we know all those unique circumstances and we can plan for you as a person, as a couple. So I think once you kind of get those generalities in mind, the next step is just work with a professional, work with someone you trust to go over your specific plan and make sure that all of the pieces are fitting together to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So if you're someone who has a general plan, or maybe you do have a specific plan and you want a second opinion, we would encourage you to give us a call and just say, hey, can you guys take a look at what I have here? Let's talk about what my goals are and make sure that I've covered all my bases. We do that for all of our clients free of charge, because we want to make sure that you have a full understanding of the value that our team can provide to you. And so we would strongly encourage you to give us a call and we'll take a look at what you have. Andy and his team will do a great job diving into that analysis and those numbers for you so that you can do what you want to do when you want to do it, whenever your retirement does occur. So thanks for your time, guys. Hope you found this insightful. And remember, check out the Truth Live event. We'd love to see you there. And we look forward to talking with you soon. Have a good one.
See you guys.